Hi, today I'm going to be talking about graphing functions and comparing functions for an 8th grade level. I'm going to be referring to the New Jersey Student Learning Standard 8.FA2, which basically just talks about comparing two different functions and being able to write them in different forms and interpret them in different forms. So let's begin with doing an example. So let's see, our example here could be y equals 2x plus 4. Now, I'm sure this equation probably looks very similar to what you've done before. But before we can make a table and graph this function, let's determine what our slope and our y-intercept are. So I'm sure we have all seen our slope formula before, which we know is y equals mx plus b. So when looking at this formula then, we are able to determine what our slope and our y-intercept are for the function that's given for our example. So I'm just going to kind of circle them here. So we'll know that 4 here is actually the y-intercept. So that's where in the graph it's actually going to be intersecting the y-axis there. Okay. Then our slope, which we know we can get from doing rise over run or taking our y values over our x values. Okay, so and we know that slope here is usually referred to as m in our slope formula equation. So then that means in our example 2 here should be our slope. So now that we've determined that our slope is 2, what does that mean for when we make our table? What that should mean is that y is actually going to increase by 2 each time x is going to increase by 1. But how can we show that happening? Well, we can do that with our table over here. So here I'm using a website called Desmos, which is usually used for graphing here. So let's try and start this table. So let's begin. We already know 1 point here from our y-intercept, so we definitely know that y can equal 4 at 1 point. And we know that if it's the y-intercept, then our x is going to be 0. So if our x then increased by 1, if our slope is 2, then we know that our y value has to then increase by 2, giving us 6. And if we keep going, for 2, if we are now on an x value of 2, then that means from the previous y value, it's going to increase by another 2, giving us 8. If we go to 3, should go to 10. And then let's do 4, should then go to 12. And you can already see, 12, not 14. You can already see from making this table, plotting our points on this graph, we already have somewhat of a line forming here. Okay. So now that we've made our table, let's actually see what happens when we put the expression in here. So let's do y equals, 2x. So you'll see over here y equals 2x, and once we put in the plus 4, it should change here. Boom, there we go. So that's what our y equals 2x plus 4 would do. Now, what would happen if I did y equals negative 2x plus 4? Where would our line go? Let's see what happens. So now that we made our slope negative, it's actually going to almost flip to our other side, because our slope of the line is actually going to determine whether or not it increases or decreases as you view it from left to right, and how steeply it's actually going to increase or decrease. So if we made it, instead of 2x, let's make it 4x. You can see now that our slope is actually steeper than it was when it was originally 2x. Okay? So let's do another example here. Okay. So our next example, let's do y equals x plus 7. Okay? So we already know that our y-intercept is going to be 7, and our slope here, although we do not have a number directly in front of x, we do know that there should technically be a 1 there. So our slope is actually 1. So let's start with our y-intercept. So we know that y is definitely going to have to be 7, and x is definitely going to have to be 0. So when we go up by 1, we know our slope is 1, so then that means y should increase only by 1. And we should keep going and see what happens. See our line forming here. And you also can see that because our numbers are following a specific pattern here, or a recursive pattern, it is considered a linear or line function. Okay, so now that we've placed our values into a table, let's actually put in our expression, see if we're correct. So let's do y equals our x plus 7. There we go. Okay? So, what would happen to our line if instead of our slope being 1, we made it 3? Okay? So it's going to actually move towards the left. If we made it negative, what will happen? There we go, negative. It moved even farther to the left. Now, what if we made it 2? It's going to actually move back. Okay? Or what if we made our slope 7? Now we just made it really, really steep. Okay? So I'm hoping that this manipulative helped, and this lesson helped. And thank you.